the Sharing the Heart of the Matter podcast. Join us as we celebrate the brilliance of authors, storytellers, and creators. I'm Wynne Leon, and in this inspiring episode, Vicki Atkinson and I are talking with mentalist and author Alexander Beresford. Alex writes so poignantly about human connection and insight. We talk about his book, Mr. Fenwick and the Door That Stayed Closed, until it didn't. It is such a feast for word lovers and anyone who believes in hope. We talk about the crossover between writing and magic that he reveals in thoughtful nuggets in his book, The Inward Stage. Alex's powers of perception not only fuel his performances as a magician, but also create rich insights that sparkle in his writing. Alex tells us about performing for former President Jimmy Carter and his family, and Vicki and I delightfully get to participate in one of his effects. Alex tells us about the Brotherhood of Magic and how he connected with another of our favorite guests, Andrew Mayne. This is a fantastic episode featuring a deep and insightful author. We know you'll love it. Hi, Alexander.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Vicki and I are so delighted to talk with you. We connected because you worked with Andrew Mayne.
Well, I saw Andrew's interview, which
Yeah.
I was fascinated by. Andrew is a very interesting guy, and I met him many years ago because I had written. I'm also a magician, and mainly I work as a mentalist, a mind reader. I had written something for the trade because I write a lot for the trade, and he was about to start doing his first lecture ever. This is many years ago, and he had seen something in one of my manuscripts for the trade that would apply to what he was producing. So, he contacted me and I said, sure, yeah, go ahead and use it. So he did. And then I met him actually in person at his very first lecture. So we hung out there and talked about that particular principle and things of that nature. So that's what it was about. And so very briefly, but I find him fascinating. I find him a very interesting person.
He is a very interesting person. So is there sort of a brotherhood, sisterhood of magicians that
Well, sure. There's organizations. I happen to be the here. I live in South Florida, and I happen to be the president of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. The historical Ring 45. So there is, I guess a brotherhood. It's an organization, and we magicians all over the world, have that in common.
Interesting, fascinating. Wow. I'm fascinated by the magic writing crossover, and we have a question to ask you about that, but we want to start with your book, Mr. Fenwick and the Door That Stayed Closed Until It Didn't.
Correct.
There's such a sense of promise and sweetness with that book. And can you give us the elevator pitch and tell what
it's hard to describe. In fact, recently I've spoken to a couple of people who thought maybe this could be a play or even sort of more of an art film, a European style type film. It's difficult to describe, but it's basically about this man that is just resigned to live his solitary life, and he has his patterns, the things that he does, and doesn't like being bothered, and he's kind of just gotten used to living that way until a lady knocks on his door with a gift, just to because she thought he should get that gift, the fig preserves. And then it's a very, very subtle story about presence and human connection. So it's not wouldn't classify it as a romance because it doesn't, don't get into that. It's really
Right.
about connection and presence,
I
Yeah.
love
and how that impacts his life in a very subtle way.
it is, but I think there's a line that I pulled from it when I was just looking at it again. It said, but the house no longer felt like a sealed envelope. It felt now like something being read.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I love that line for that sense of opening
Yeah.
that you present there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he's in a hesitant way allowing for a little bit of that openness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't go into his history. I don't go into, why he is in that particular place in his life. But you can imagine if you're a human,
Yeah.
and I have to clarify that
Yeah.
because there's so much AI now. We have to.
Right.
If you're a human,
Yeah.
then you can kind of you
Yeah.
can get it.
Well, and I think just habits can close us off,
Yeah.
Over time.
I love because there is a neighbor that pops by, and Alabaster is a little, I would say he has an air of suspicion about him, like, what's the gift, and he's hesitant, and
Yeah.
just there is a passage, when he got to know her a little bit, where she asked if he'd always lived alone, and he said quietly, not always, but long enough that I started calling it peace instead of loneliness. And for me, that kind of centered me about the whole piece and his life. It's about choices to kind of live small, but not less. From everything that you've given us about him, he wasn't depressed or suicidal or lacking. It was his choice. And of course, his companion, Indigo the cat. There's a paragraph where you wrote, Indigo slinked in without drama, leapt onto the windowsill, and took a long, measured look at Lillian, the neighbor. It was a gaze that suggested judgment, but with room for negotiation. Just like, even the cat, right, has a perspective about, life with
It's Fenwick's cat,
Yes, but I think, cat lovers will love this because he has a very wise companion there, I think.
Yeah. The cat's very very subtle as well.
Word lovers will love this because it's
Yeah.
it's just got so much packed in every word.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah, it was delightful. Really, unlike anything I've read for a really long time, Alexander. It was really a joy to read.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You kind of carry that same theme of connection and being seen in the inward stage, which is another short book that we really, really enjoyed. You have a statement. Let me read it here. It is a quietly luminous document, part philosophical journey, part poetic confession, written by a mind reader who spends his life performing illusions for others while quietly unraveling deeper truths for himself. So,
Whoa.
There's a lot there. Tell us more about being a performer, all these insights that you've developed over the years.
Yeah, I mean, you begin worried about the basic stuff, entertainment, making sure that you're prepared. I studied theater in school. I studied creative writing as well. But you begin worried about those things. You want to make sure that what you're performing is entertaining. But as I got older, I wanted to try to do things that had a little more meaning, and in that process, once you're kind of set in what it is that you're doing, comfortable in the performing, and the entertainment, and of course things go wrong, and I do even write a little chapter on things going wrong in there. But once you're comfortable there, then if you're because as a mind reader, a lot of the stuff I do, or most of what I do, is interactive. I'm working with people, so a magician could perform an entire show without really saying anything, because things could be floating. Excuse me, things could be changing. But as a mentalist, a mind reader, it's very interactive. So you benefit by connecting, you know, with people. It's it's a lot of times it'll happen more naturally. You can't really force it, but you have to be open to that. So some years ago, I started just writing little notes for myself, about those things, because I thought that they might improve aspects of my performance in connecting with people. Because again, I go back, if when you start, you're just worried about things going right, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I got to pay attention who I can call up to, who I can work with, in the audience. So you're paying attention to these things, you're doing all that. But once you get to a certain comfort level, then you can be more open, and you can just allow those sort of connections to happen. And so I started writing these notes on just different things that would occur to me after a performance, and I had a ton of them. At one point, I think I shared a couple of those things with a friend, and then I thought maybe I shouldn't just keep it to myself, and maybe share it, because it's not just about, it's not about performance, really, strictly speaking. It's more about connecting. It's more about being human, as a performer. So I think people who don't perform could still get something out of it,
Right.
But I think there's an applicability of the things that you put into that book that go beyond, the skill set that you have that obviously most of your readers won't have. But especially there was a section where you wrote about silence and the power of silence. And I think, as you said, in connection and interaction and kind of the fast-paced world that we all live in, where faster is always better, what you wrote about the power of silence, and I think you referred to it as the living silence, that there is power in that moment to give space to things. And oh my gosh, I think those are really good life lessons all wrapped up in there.
Yeah, and as a performer, you in the beginning, you fear that silence.
Right.
You want to fill that space, So
Yeah.
if there's silence, you start talking, because you want to fill that space. And if you have a little more experience, and it's not just me, many performers do this. No, you then play with that silence. You allow it to happen, because it changes things sometimes.
Right. And I took from that you sometimes, in the getting quiet when you're performing, or maybe in life, you learn things.
Yeah. Oh,
and I'm like, oh yeah, that's true on so many levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
I like another one of your observations, which was, I used to want to be clever, but clever is cheap. Clever is the coin one spends when they're afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And that's what I was just saying, in the beginning, you want to be clever. And I care more about, it's just different things, you want things to work out, you want it to be entertaining. But yeah, if you can connect with people, or tell us a particular story.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that your perspective is that people want to feel wonder, not necessarily be impressed by things. And in order to make people feel that way, you have to really connect with them on a personal level. And that really hit home for me too. It's sort of my background in the helping professions, but I was like, oh, cool. I'm learning from a mentalist here about,
I mean,
really good practice.
Yeah, it applies to everything.
Wasn't the quote from President Jimmy Carter about that wonder? There's a quote on one of your websites.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I have the letter upstairs that he wrote to me after that performance. But yeah, something.
You're so humble.
Nice.
Wynne and I found that, we're like, holy moly, guacamole, this is super cool, right?
Right.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it was a good friend of mine, is a former Secret Service agent. At the time, he was actually on the Carter detail, and he also performs magic.
Really?
So so he called me one day, and he says, as a Secret Service agent, sometimes he would just do some magic for President Carter and family, because he extended family. It's a big family. And he called me, and then he says, we're down in the Keys, and I told the president about you, and he would like you to come down and perform for the family. So it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, of course I went. And it was a wonderful experience because they're, I mean, just regular, very casual, regular type of people. They both got up when I walked in with a couple of Secret Service agents in this bungalow in the Keys. They both got up. Him and Rosalind got up from their chairs to come greet me at the door, and it was very nice, and it was fun. It was memorable. And then he wrote this real nice letter afterwards, which was the cherry on the.
Cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
What an experience.
Yeah, that was unique, definitely. Historical, right? Having a historical document from an American president. So.
Right.
Yeah.
A personal letter.
Right.
Was it after the presidency? I mean, was it?
Oh yeah. This was a few years ago. Yeah. Yeah, he was already. Yeah, because they all former presidents have a Secret Service detail, Yeah.
The photo of them, they looked like in good health, and God bless them. They lived a long time and had amazing lives.
Yeah, they were fine. They were great at that time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're fascinated by the overlap between magic and writing. It seems like there's, especially in reading your books, there's a beautiful sense of drawing the reader in, which I imagine to be part of magic as well. What have you discovered about magic and writing and what they have in common?
I think both things are magic, I mean, when you can read something and it touches you in a certain way, that is a form of magic, I guess, And as Stephen King said in his book on writing, it's sort of a time machine, because the author is writing it at that time, and you see it years later, and you sort of, kind of like a haiku too, You read a Basho haiku from so long ago, and you're present. Not every haiku is going to connect to you, but you read something from so long ago, and you're there, and there's this presence, and you're like, wow, that's impactful because it was written so long ago, and yet I'm there, and that particular moment in time. It was just fascinating. So I mean, magic and they both came about in separate ways. I mean, when I was a kid growing up in Los Angeles, we used to go to a Disneyland every time people came in from out of town. Let's go to Disneyland.
Right.
And back then they had a magic store on Main Street. There was also a hobby shop close to where I lived that had a small counter where the guy sold magic there. So those were the first couple of places that I saw magic, and I became sort of interested in and made my parents buy me things.
Of course.
To then, when my parents were having, pool parties or barbecues, whatever, I would be doing stuff to their friends. But I always found that interesting and that fun. And it wasn't. It was right around that time too that I became aware of Uri Geller. Oh wow! Coincidentally, there's. I think my daughter must have left this here. Uri Geller was doing that, sort of over the TV set, sort of fixing clocks and broken watch. Put your broken watch on top of the TV, and believe that it's gonna and the spoon bending and all that. I mean, I was I don't know. I was just fascinated by that. I thought it was really interesting,
Well, I think kids are, I mean, they're not quite sure. And magic is very real for them, and it's such a fun. The other day, my kids, they're 5 and 9, so they're young. They decided that they were going to show me a magic trick, and they got these little daisies. And then they picked off all the petals and put it between their hands, and then they let the stem drop as they did like this. And they're like, "Look, it's gone."
Yeah.
They were thrilled. They made up a magic trick.
Yeah. I mean, I think being in touch with that, I mean, it really sparked my creativity. And my uncle too, when I was a kid, my uncle taught me to play chess. And when he was teaching me chess, he would say, I mean, can you imagine how this was invented or created? You know, was this like an old general that put this together to demonstrate? It's like a war, you know, between two.
Yeah.
And he would just be telling me these things like my uncle was like a storyteller, you know.
Right.
And he worked in finance and stuff, but you know, when he talked to me, and then like sometimes we'd be outside and he would look up, he says, "You see those stars up there?" He
Oh,
says, "Do you think there might be life in those? Because those are like other planets, you know. We may never be able to get." I mean, all this crazy stuff, and it just expanded my interest in and he would just go about different things, you know. You know, not all the time, but when suddenly he would start going deep on something, you know. And I was a kid, but I was fascinated by that. Really, really encouraged my asking questions and looking into things, you know.
Right.
right.
Creativity and storytelling too.
And I began to learn magic and learn those things. When I was 17, I worked in a magic store. I was living in Dallas at the time. You'd have magicians back when we had brick and mortar magic stores, right? You learn so much because you have all these magicians coming in and they're showing you things, or you're, you know, they're asking you about things. And so there's this constant connection there, and you learn a lot in that. And so the writing came later.
I like
I'd
the
like to read.
connection of all of it, though, because it's about kind of messing with people's minds just a little bit, right? Kind of
Yeah.
pushing the envelope just a little bit about what you
Yeah.
think you know and perspective. And I think you have to be thinking about the audience, the people, what emotion are you trying to cultivate, you know, and all the different things that you do. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
You're
When
reading
you're
people, sensing things, trying to, it's very, you're thinking about the recipient who's on the other end, no matter what you're doing. Yes?
yes, particularly in an evening show
Yeah.
where you have the time to build that. A lot of times, you know, I mean, if I'm doing a, you know, corporate thing, it's a different energy. It's hard to really connect. But if you're doing like an evening show, a parlor show, where you have time to tell a story, to
Yeah.
develop something, then yes, more so than in the quicker sort of presentations, you know.
Well, and you refer to that as an effect, right? Because I think the word trick feels like pejorative, judgmental, minimizing in some way. If you're you, just you feel that way?
uh,
It's not a
I
trick.
Yeah, I like to call things effects rather
Yeah.
than tricks. And I tell young magicians too when they go, "Oh, you know, I have this trick, or I saw this trick," and yeah, I mean, but that's a personal to me. I always tell them, don't call it a trick. You know, call,
Yeah.
have fun with it. Call it an experiment. Call it you know,
Yeah.
something else. Yeah, I usually call it an effect because I guess you know, it creates an effect. That's also been used for a very long time, you know, before my time.
Did
So,
you
yeah.
have an effect for us?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with ESP symbols.
Say more.
Right? Can you see
For
this?
anybody that's listening that
These were designed by Dr. Ryan and Dr. Zener in the parapsychology department at Duke University, right? But they're you know, symbols like this have been on cave walls, right? There's a connection to these basic symbols and humanity. So I just have this simple board here with these symbols, and I have these cards. There's some cards here. So I wanted to do a little test with the two of you. I'm going to hold up one of the cards, and I'll start with you, Wynne.
Okay.
You will tell me where you believe this one goes. Now, I want you to feel it. I want you to try to sense it or be open to maybe, because I'm looking at it. I know what it is.
Right.
So
which symbol it matches?
where do you think this goes on the board here?
In the middle.
Which one? What is the symbol? The star. So this one. Right? Okay, very good. We're starting.
Boy.
We're starting.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to work through this. We're going to put it right there. Now, Vicki, where do you think this one goes?
So I'm having a hard time because I'm trying to answer your question, but I'm also just drawn to one of the symbols on the board. So do you have advice for me about what to do about
Just
that?
go with your intuition.
I'm a squiggle girl. Give me the wavy lines.
We're going to put it right here. Now, you realize that the odds of you guys getting all these right is unlikely, right?
Yeah.
It's rare, a very rare occurrence when it does work. So I have another one here. Where would you say this goes?
I think that goes over the plus.
The plus sign. Right here at the end there. All right. Now, the last one, Vicki, because the actual last one is going to be automatically selected.
Yes.
Where do you think that goes?
Circle.
The circle. Wonderful. And of course, this one goes. Yeah, right. Now, you had a free choice on where to place all of these. And like I said earlier, the odds of that happening, of you matching all of these symbols, is very rare. But when you allow intuition to work its magic, wonderful things happen. Look at that.
Yeah, and for listeners, it's a straight match. We
Oh,
have
for a second
a
I
royal
forgot
flush.
that there's an audio element to this. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're on camera now. So I should have known that, because I have worked in radio. But there you have it. I mean, this is sort of miraculous. It doesn't usually happen, but you guys, I knew it was going to work with you.
Well, that's amazing that intuition can be in three. We're in 3 different time zones.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, super cool.
That is so cool.
What is it like when you're doing something in a large room of people? What you just did for Wynne and I was, pretty controlled, and we just said we're in 3 very different places. But what's it like when you've got the energy from people in a room with you? Is it different than what you just experienced with us?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is very quiet. Usually with more, with a bigger audience, there's this higher energy level. Yeah, so there's different things I will do with an audience.
It reminds me of another line that you had from the Inward Stage, which is, a person's gauge is their fingerprint in motion.
And a cat just came to visit, for those that are listening.
She's curious, Diana. She's likes to disrupt things. A person's gaze.
Yeah.
And
I imagine a room full of people, you can really see that.
Yeah, I mean, before I used to, like you'd be peeking from the curtain to think, oh, maybe I'll use that person, I'll use this person. You kind of observe them a little bit to see who might work well with certain things. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I just go, and then as you begin, you start, you watch people, you look them in the eyes, and then you go, okay, this person be good for this, and just sort of allow things to happen. It's fun.
Can I read one other thing you wrote that we can't let you go without me drilling down about this, because it got a wow in my margin notes. You wrote, I've said things on stage that shocked me, moments when I spoke someone's unspoken truth and something inside me cracked, not because I was clever, but because I was hearing my own voice echoed back. How do you, because then not too far away from that in another paragraph, you write that sometimes, rarely, but it happens, you'll weep for reasons you can't always understand. Wow. Can you speak to all of that? What is that like to receive, and then you're holding on to it? What are you doing with it?
In writing that, there's a slight poetic license, but
Yeah.
so it's not like actual weeping,
Yeah.
though I have there are certain things I perform that if the person is open, they connect on a different level, right? So they may reveal something, or maybe, as an example, if I ask them to think of somebody that's important to them, somebody that's important in their lives, clearly I haven't met the person, so it's nobody I would know, but somebody that is important to them. A lot of times people will choose somebody who has passed, and I don't know. It's just some things that people say that I recognize in myself,
Yeah.
So it kind of creates a different impact. I don't point that out necessarily when I'm performing, uh, but it does connect with me. And then sometimes afterwards, after the performance, I do think about it, wow, that was sort of an impactful moment, because everybody can see that the person was moved by what they were connecting with, right? And they may start, I may ask them a couple of questions, and they may say things related to that person that will connect with something in my life. I've lost my father, or different things that have happened. So I
It
never intended.
speaks, yeah, but it speaks to the undercurrent of emotion. I think
Yeah.
when starting off talking about kind of the writing and the magic and the mentalism and all of that, it's all connected. It's touching people's hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that
Yeah.
human connection that flows through all of your work, whether it's
Yeah.
mentalism.
And if I could go back to Fenwick for a moment, I had written that a long time ago, when I was younger, and I was looking through some old files on my computer, and I found that story, and it really touched me today. So it's like the me from back then who
Right.
wrote this. And I struggled initially to try to remember what made me write this at the time, because I was writing different things. But I don't know, I always sort of thought what it would be like to be older in a different sort of situation, So I read that, but it touched me. It was like that communication from a younger me to me today. And I go, I can, there's some Mr. Fenwick in me today. I mean,
Yeah.
that kid was a mind reader. And when I say
Yeah.
kid, I was in, this was a while back, but it wasn't like when I was very young. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And I thought, wow, he's a kid's a mind reader, because it sort of connected with me today. I don't like people coming to my door. I basically live alone today. My daughter is mostly off with her fiance and lives basically with him, even though she has a room here. And I went, wow. I mean, I connected with this guy much more today than I did back when I actually wrote it.
Yeah. That's so much grace in his story, and it'll be hard for, our viewers and listeners to understand. They need to read it because there's some grace in it, but it's also a little bit of a mystery. Like, we turn the pages because we're like, what's he gonna do? He's
Right.
very deliberate about everything, but it was a little bit of a page turner because we wonder what next?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah. And
Exactly.
then,
And
yeah,
then-
yeah. So
Thank
good.
you
the
so
door
much.
that stayed closed until it didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time, for coming on, for talking about intuition, which I have friends who believe that is disappearing in our ages of technology. Thank you. It's just been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. And I'll
Truly.
say one more thing. Earlier, I had mentioned, AI and how it's going to be so present in our lives. I think live entertainment, or things where humans can connect with each other, are going to become very special. I think in
Yeah.
5, 10 years from now, it's going to become a unique thing, and probably expensive.
Yeah. Well,
It's going to be like a
and
niche thing.
absolutely. And tell folks where they can find you, because we'll link everything, but where can people learn more about you?
Well, eyesandminds.com is
Mhm.
where I have my performer page. You can go to
Mm-hmm.
Amazon and find these books in print, printed
Mm-hmm.
or as a Kindle
Mm-hmm.
edition. The Inward Stage is also an audiobook. It's available, I think, in most audiobook places right now. I read it myself. So that's as an audiobook. I'm thinking of doing Alabaster as an audiobook as well.
Well,
It
and
has to be
you've
right.
got some great dialogue, and I'm thinking about this line that I love, which is, "She doesn't respond well to bribes," Mr. Fenwick said. "Neither do I," Lillian replied.
Right.
"But I still like being offered things."
Yeah. Yeah. Who
Right?
doesn't?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
such good dialogue.
That's because she was offering the cat some chicken,
Yeah.
and that's why
Yeah.
Fenwick said that. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey.
There
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
And
It's
another
fun.
reminder, Indigo, like all cats, are smarter than we are. They know
hmm
things, don't they? Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
they just do. Well, this was
Well,
such a treat.
it was
Thank
so
you.
good. We got to see a little bit of Diana too. So,
Yeah.
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 Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for listening. Our music is composed for Sharing the Heart of the Matter by the exquisitely talented duo of Chad Canfora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, please visit our site at sharingtheheartofthematter.com.